don't attack a catamaran.
Oh, no. You know I wouldn't do that. All right, you guys. Have a good day. We'll keep it going here.
Thanks for choosing America's Morning Headquarters. We're going to get you here through this mid-morning hours here of this midweek day here, Wednesday upon us.
Yeah, the Weather Channel helping you plan for all of your big events ahead. And it's the first full week of fall. Put that in quotes.
Right.
Meteorological fall, legit.
September.
Yeah.
I mean, you start thinking fall things in September. You get cool downs, right? School, back to school for many of us.
But meanwhile, we got cooling centers open because it's too hot.
So wild.
Schools can't even stay in session a full day.
It's insane. Eventually, we hope things will cool down to where they should be. But for now, still pretty hot out there, so be prepared for that. Of course, the tropics have gotten busy, staying busy. We have a system that is on its way to being a very powerful one in the Atlantic.
Yeah, this is a rite of passage of fall, right? Going into September, oftentimes the worst hurricanes on the planet find their home in fall, in September. And right on cue, we've got one in the books. It looks like it's going to become very powerful, as you mentioned. Lee, that is.
Yes.
In the makings. We got to talk more about Lee's track, so that's coming up this morning.
Yeah.
Well, there is some relief from the heat, but it does come by way of storms in today's big deal. Now, severe threats that lurk over the Midwest, as well as the Deep South, just as
dealing with, hit a record high in a number of spots through the Northeast yesterday. We're going to do it today in Philly. It wasn't a record yesterday. It was close, within a degree. But today, 96 will set a new record. Our average high is 83. We've got temps that are going to be in the 90s throughout the rest of the week. We don't drop to the 80s until the weekend, and still, that's the upper 80s, actually. Is this normal, you're asking? Well, I mean, usually by this point in the season, we don't see a whole lot more in the way of 90 degrees. The average last 90-degree temperature in places like Burlington and Syracuse and Buffalo and Harrisburg and Pittsburgh is all in August. And by the way, it's September, as you know. So, you know, it may not be the latest 90 on record, but we are certainly looking at a little past beyond when we typically on average see it. So temps are going to be up. The heat advisories are up across New York State, a lot of New England. We see that all across much of central New Jersey, New York City area, Philadelphia, D.C., again, Baltimore. You again are under a heat advisory for this heat. And it's not just the heat, it is also the humidity. I checked your dew points this morning. It's up about 70, and so that means it feels sticky out there. And that heat index will be a concern. It's warm this morning. Temps really didn't cool down that much overnight because we have that higher dew point. 80 in New York City right now, 83 into around the D.C. area and Richmond as well. Look where we're going today. 98 in Richmond. We've got 93 in New York City. Boston, 85 is a warm number for us. Maybe you're not complaining as much up there. It's really this core of this heat wave that's really getting you here across parts of the Mid-Atlantic, where we'll be at record-breaking levels. 99 in the D.C. area. Harrisburg at 96. That would tie a record. Philly would break it. We should break it in Albany as well. And it's not just the only spot we're dealing with it. The heat continues in Texas as well. Here our numbers continue to get up to dangerous levels, hitting the 100s. That streak continues here, and the feels like will be, of course, even higher. Alex, the forecast, in fact, a few of them happening right now. Around Nashville coming our way today. Temps are going to be in the 90s, feeling very much like a summer day. The humidity, the heat, all add up to some thunderstorms. We'll see that continue into the evening and then tapering off after that. There's been a few in the area this morning, watching Middle Tennessee, also watching across West Tennessee and northern Mississippi as well. Some storms with lightning right now. In Memphis, we're fine, but you can see just to the east of there, just to the south of there. Also, there is another cluster moving in through northeastern Arkansas. That could at least skirt the northern part of the Memphis area. And then we look at Nashville. Again, a couple of showers now scooting north of town with lightning on that ride up on 65 from Nashville to Bowling Green. It's a pretty stormy ride. That rain is coming down pretty heavily. There'll be more today, but probably farther south. That's where we have just a little more instability building for you. We're going to watch from Louisiana, northern Louisiana, all the way up through southern Middle Tennessee for that risk of storms. Here comes the front, and that's the lifting mechanism. Out ahead of it, plenty of moisture. Where you get the daytime heating, we're still getting that instability building, and we'll see that moving in through, again, northern Louisiana, Mississippi as we get through the afternoon. There's going to be two areas to watch. We'll keep an eye to the north. Not likely to see a lot of severe weather up there, just maybe not as much instability. Keep a better watch to the south. And again, I think the chance for storms with damaging winds will probably be the main threat that we see across this area. Maybe could be some hail as well. We've got that look of rainfall that could be heavy, some possible flash flooding, and potentially potential issue out there, and we'll see that through the afternoon. Again, you get rid of those showers this morning, Nashville. We bring in a few more late afternoon. We see this all sinking south here through northern Mississippi, Louisiana, and that'll continue into this evening and then kind of fizzling about an hour or two post sunset. All right, let's go over and talk more about the tropics, though. Says on that, we're going to actually talk about this quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got some time to do so as we track this thing. Tropical threats in the fall. Yeah.
I'll take it one step further.
Oh, let's see.
Under an umbrella next to the ocean.
Ah, there you go. Love it, love it. All right, well, keep the comment. Basin continues to blossom with tropical activity. A major hurricane that could form towards the end of the week.
Meteorologist Jim Cantori took a trip to Virginia Tech's Department of Aerospace and Ocean Engineering, which studies hurricane force winds to see how much force is in a Category 5 hurricane. Break, thanks to a front coming through. So we get a break from the heat.
Yes.
Although, of course, that comes with a price.
Yeah, you got to deal with some storms.
We are starting to see the fronts now progress farther south. As typically happens in September. You know, you're not going to get that in July and early August in Texas or even Arkansas for that matter. But now in September, those fronts are making their way southward, and it's about time we got our good fall front coming in.
It is about time.
Yeah, not Florida though. Yeah, that's going to be December before you.
So let me just say, Florida. I was in Fort Lauderdale over the weekend. The dew point dropped to 70.
It did.
Something happened there.
Ooh, 70.
Yes.
Which, I mean, sounds crazy, but that's low.
It was a big deal for them, yes.
All right, well, let's talk about some of these storms out to be strong, potentially even.
Right now, Alex, is becoming a concern. There's a couple of areas that we're keeping an eye on here south of Chicago. Now, the rain has moved out, but there are some flash flood warnings that remain in effect thanks to the rain that was heavy at times when it came through. We have showers now moving over into lower Michigan, especially on that southwestern side, northern Indiana as well. Here's a closer view of where it is. Grand Rapids down to Kalamazoo. You're into some heavy rain right now, either 96 or 94. Both are going to be wet on that west end of things across lower Michigan. And there's a bit more behind it, too. You can see some thunderstorms coming in right over Lake Michigan this morning. Now, here comes the low. Here comes the front tracking east. By the next few days, we'll see that move into the northeast, and that'll bring some showers to come in. Also, finally help break our heat here across the northeast. That's the good news out of that. Let's take a look at today's risk for severe. Lightning is going to be the main risk. We've got that chance of storms with possible severe weather across Michigan, all the way down through the whole state of Ohio, into parts of Kentucky. And Alex talked about where some of those stronger upper-level winds are punching in. It's really not up here to the north. So I think overall it's limited with the risk of severe, but certainly that chance of lightning, always a danger.
Coffee talk.
Yeah, those are the origination points. We want to talk about the finishing spots.
And with Lee in particular.
Yeah.
Because we're going from some of our favorite destination spots and our interests in the Caribbean.
Too close for comfort.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you see a forecast like this and you want to think, well, it's going to be out to sea. But until it actually is out to sea, you can't rule anything out.
That's right. The best estimate right now is that residents in the Virgin Islands and interests there, but we're not going to turn our backs on it because it is very powerful and very likely to be close enough by to keep our interest intact. But we have to talk about what happens thereafter because there's a lot of discussion about what might happen to Lee down the road. Is it going to get closer to the United States, maybe the Turks and Caicos, the Bahamas? Well, in the near term, as we go into the early part of next week, we may not have seen that northward turn come Monday. Right?
Yeah.
That's the all-important. What longitude does that northward turn happen? And its question is when, and that gives us, an idea of how close it's going to be to the U.S.
So you can see it clearly there. Most of those models take that turn towards the north. So when you see something like that, you have a bit more confidence that, yes, the northward turn is going to happen.
So I'm running here the GFS ensemble members. So the GFS run is done many times over again. And they're all kind of saying the same thing. And you can even show that the European Center's forecast are doing the same thing also, that by midweek it should be on that northward trajectory. But if you have interest in Bermuda, you're going to want to pay attention to this. And also, this only takes us out to the middle of next week.
Right.
This is even well beyond the cone, by the way. This is, in this 6 to 10 day time frame. We're not done with this thing at that point.
No, and there's a lot that could happen between now and then. I mean, we know what the steering conditions are right now, and there's a forecast for how things are going to change. But any little sort of perturbation in that could affect the track of Lee.
That is such a good point, because what I put on this map here is the steering pattern we think by the middle of next week during that northward turn. If you live in Florida or you live in the southeast U.S., the risk is low, but not zero. It's low. But farther north you go, the greater the risk is. We don't know if there's going to be a trough or a ridge over southeastern Canada, let's say not just by the middle of next week, but beyond that, when it really matters, like in the next 10 days. We don't know what the phase of the mid-latitude pattern is going to be. This thing could get uncomfortably close to the northeast U.S. in about 10 days. We need to watch this very, very carefully.
Yeah, I mean, and think about it. Even if we said, okay, we absolutely know what it's going to be.
Right.
The speed of the storm itself could change, and that could change everything down the road. I mean, there's just so much that we have to filter through to get there.
There's a lot of uncertainty to unpack. Again, if you live in the southeast or Florida, you can kind of like keep this in mind, but I think the risk is low. But the farther north you go, the risk goes up. We just don't know what that jet stream is going to look like that far ahead.
Yeah.
Things that stick out make me nervous, like the Cape, and like just you look at what's sticking out in the eastern U.S. We got to keep an eye on really all of it. Well, the summer season though is coming to a close there, plus the rip current risk, which is high still across the east coast of Florida. You can see that stretching all the way down almost to the Miami beaches. There's also some spots where the red flags will be flying. We've got a high rip current risk there on the panhandle of Florida, including beaches around St. George Island, Cape San Blas, and over towards Panama City. There's a little spot up there in the northern part of North Carolina coastline, including around Corolla. So a number of areas where you got to be swimming right by those lifeguards. Never swim alone, and make sure you know how to swim before going into the ocean. I know that seems obvious, but sometimes it happens. People go into stand. They think they're just going to be soaking in the water a little bit, and then all of a sudden the waves pick them up. We've got some really warm water temperatures out there. This is Gulf Shores, Alabama, 87 degrees. Air temperature will be close to that, about 94 today. Panama City Beach, again, we've got that high risk of rip currents. 86-degree water temperature. Air temperature is going to be in the upper 80s. Sunshine. Overall, a beautiful beach day. It's just that you got to be wary of those rip current risks. All right, so the UV index, it is still running high or very high all across the southeast today. Even spots where we're going to see a couple of showers moving through, like into Mississippi. We are going to watch for enough sunshine out there to drive up that UV index. Clearwater Beach, checking in with you. We've got temperatures in the upper 80s today. It's going to be a hot one per usual. Water temperatures are in the mid-80s out there in the Gulf of Mexico. And we take it out to Miami Beach. Now, again, keeping a watch on those rip currents just north of there is a high risk. We've got a moderate risk in Miami Beach and on the local areas. 85-degree water temperature, air temperature upper 80s. No rain in the forecast. Alex?
Yeah, not bad at all. Well, whether it is. Yeah.
Sometimes I just can't stop reading, though. And then I go to bed. Jen said this.
Do you get back and go to bed? Do you go into the bed, or you stay on the couch?
I know, go to bed, but yeah, no, you can easily you fall asleep with the book. Here we go again. They should be more exciting.
Right. Keep the comments coming or rolling on in. We've got a poll that is there on X.
Fall, let's put that in quotes because it's meteorological fall and it doesn't feel like it. We've got cooling centers that are open because it's too hot. Kids are not able to go to a full day of school because it's too hot.
Which is wild, right? You generally think, okay, in some of these areas in the Northeast, they go to school right after Labor Day because that's when things tend to be a bit on the cooler side. Not this time around. Yeah. It's boiling hot out there.
September can be sneaky hot.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have some ferocious heat waves in September, and we have in parts of the country that, but we're also starting to see signs of significant fronts come in too, which is cooling down places that have been hot in recent days and weeks. Finally, some cooler air is really starting to show its teeth, I think.
Yeah. Yes, all right, so we'll talk about that. Also, the tropics really top of mind, too. We've got a powerful, well, potentially powerful system in the Atlantic. And so we got to talk about Lee.
Yep.
And we got to talk about potential impacts down the road.
Yeah, and if you live in the southeast U.S. right now, the risk appears to be low. But if you live in the mid-Atlantic or northeast, that is not the same case. So you're going to want to keep an eye on this. Don't turn your back on it. We have a long way to deal with it, lots of uncertainty. But in the next 6 to 10 days, things could get kind of dicey, I think, for many of us.
Yeah, one to watch. Well, there is some relief from the heat, but it does.
These heat, we didn't make a record yesterday in Philadelphia. We were within 1 degree, but we should do it today. 96 will break a new record. 95 still tomorrow. We keep it in the 90s through Friday and even Saturday. Once we cool down a little bit, 87. We're still looking at above average. Average high right now is 83. And you're asking, is this normal? Well, on average, our last 90-degree day across most cities in the Northeast happens in August here. So the average last from Burlington to Syracuse all the way through Harrisburg and Pittsburgh is in August. But the latest is much later than it is right now. So yes, it's a little past on average when you might see it, but it's not our latest 90-degree day on record by any stretch. Heat advisories are up all across parts of New England, New York State. We've got Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the Delmarva area, also, Baltimore, D.C., down to Charlottesville and Virginia under a heat advisory. Some of the biggest numbers are going to be over here, where already we are soaring to above average for the day, and it's not even lunchtime yet. We're 87 in D.C., and we're heading up into the 90s. 98 is the forecast high today in Richmond. All across the Northeast, we've got 90s. Even Boston. This 84 degrees is a big deal. This is warmer than average for us here. The humidity is up as well. Dew points up around 70 for a lot of us in the Northeast, and that's going to just make this heat feel even stickier. And it is record-breaking. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or record-tying. They would tie a record for you, breaking a record in Philly and in Albany, New York, Burlington. We're going to tie it. D.C., we break it as well, 99 degrees. The other spot that's been hot is Texas, and we're just not catching a break here. Continuing with the heat advisories today, warm already this morning in the upper 80s here. As is typical, we just don't get to cool down much overnight, and we're heading to 100 plus yet again. We've already seen a record number of days hitting 100 plus here, almost doubling what the old record was in a couple of spots. We're talking about San Antonio and Austin and Corpus Christi. Houston, we're going to 100 again for you today, and it will feel much hotter than that everywhere. Even if you're not going to hit 100 exactly on the thermometer, you're definitely going to feel up and beyond that, thanks to the fact that we've got those higher heat indices. Austin, we've got 102 for you, breaking a record. So a daily record continues to be broken across all of these locations, and we keep that number, that count going on for the number of days hitting 100 plus here. What a summer it has been, and now fall, Alex.
Right, absolutely.
Well, I'll show you where we're going to be dealing with that, with thunderstorms already in the mix this morning. We've seen that, or heard it anyway, here in thunder north of town around Nashville. There'll be more later today, and even continuing into this evening before the front moves on through. And it'll be warm, too, before the front moves on through, heading to the 90s. Couple of storms up there in Middle Tennessee. You see some lightning strikes down here into parts of northern Mississippi, into northeastern Arkansas. That may scoot just north of the Memphis area, although you got some time to wait and watch that little cluster of storms. And this moving now, just moved through downtown Nashville. Couple of lightning strikes out there, a little bit of rain still happening, but we'll have to keep an eye on what happens later today. That red zone stretches out ahead of our front from Middle Tennessee down into parts of Arkansas, into even Mississippi. We're going to see some thunderstorms. That's where we have some of the greater instability out ahead of this front. The lifting mechanism, air that has a little more humidity to it, kind of rises easier. We will have some stronger winds punching in at the mid-levels, I think, especially across this zone, moving into western and middle Tennessee, and that could mean some of these storms have a bit more energy to work with. We also have heavy rain concerns, and any of these storms, if they don't move quick enough, can have that potential to drop some bigger rainfall rates, and that always can lead to that risk of flash flooding. So be aware of that as the rain kicks up. About 4 o'clock this afternoon, or maybe a little before, Nashville, Middle Tennessee, down here into Huntsville in northern Alabama, Tupelo. You see that the look. This is a forecast radar, but you kind of see the look to the kind of storms we're going to get. They may be hail producers. They may be bringing some damaging winds, and you never can rule out an isolated tornado. So we are going to keep an eye on that as well. Now, today into tomorrow, we'll see the front on the move. Scattered showers here through parts of the South. New Orleans. Let's give us a break to our heat. Rainfall, I think, is needed across Louisiana with the drought that's going on there. Then, of course, the tropics. So let's go over to Dr. Greg. We're also getting ready for today.
Yeah.
National Read a Book Day.
That is right. Absolutely. Of course, the tropical threats in the fall may set the stage for great sort of ways to catch a nap or go fall asleep. That's what it seems like.
For sure. Well, you can go to X and now Threads to send us your comments. You can also share your pictures and video with us using the hashtag YesTV. I voted for beach, of course. And actually, Alex, that's one of the few spots where I truly will just read and read and read. I feel like there's always so much to do otherwise in life.
Right.
If you're on the beach, you got nothing to do.
You're right. You can finish a book right in one setting. Are we going with the physical book
I prefer a physical book, but for the sake of weight, I go with the e-reader.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I like the physical
book's ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, let us know again, Chime. The Atlantic is still bubbling with activity, and with above average water temperatures, the ocean heat waves are increasing in frequency and duration due to climate change.
Meteorologist Jackie Jarris examines how they affect hurricanes.
Child dying in a hot car recently, so I think the number is now 24, 25 this year. I mean, just way too many. Every one of these could be prevented.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Right. Just make sure nothing is in your car when you get out of it.
Yeah.
So hopefully our Scorching Car Scale is a good reminder to check your car, look before you lock here, whatever you need to remind yourself of that, no matter if your routine changes or not. We also are going to see some relief from the heat out there thanks to a front coming in. But the thing about fronts in the fall is they have a little more oomph to them.
Yes, they can bring thunderstorms and some severe weather, because we are starting to see now that temperature contrast that originally brought the severe weather in the spring comes back again in fall. Cooler air masses run into some of that summer heat. We've got that for us, I think, up ahead.
We certainly do. So let's detail the areas of these things, because the southern...
Right, so let's get a look at things for you here with the northern side of this front. We'll see now these thunderstorms on the move across lower Michigan as they continue to do, moving away from places like Grand Rapids. You still have some rain out there, but the thunder and lightning is moving off to your north and to your east. Same thing in Kalamazoo, everything kind of creeping eastbound, so heading over towards Lansing and the state capital here in Michigan. We'll get some rain and some thunder and lightning as a possibility. Now, here comes the front and the low pressure. As this comes on through, you'll get the showers. You may get the thunder and lightning, as you've been seeing. It's possible we get some strong gusty winds here, not as likely as it is farther to the south. So we'll keep an eye on that portion of it. And, you know, as we see this whole front and low move east, it'll bring some rain into the northeast, and that will help cut the heat as well here as we get into places like New York State and Pennsylvania through the rest of the week. Now, for today, though, it's right here in Michigan, down through Ohio. We've got the chance of storms, maybe even into western Pennsylvania, like around Pittsburgh. Through the later hours today, you may see a few thunderstorms. Here's how it looks in the forecast radar, watching those showers and possible thunderstorms move across lower Michigan. You see how it kind of breaks up. I mean, they're very scattered in nature, but we'll see some of that underneath that low pressure kind of rotating around up here. Chicago, you might even get another thunderstorm before the day is done. The East Coast, because we've got Lee on our minds, and that's a possibility.
Right. And so let's start with the cone and take us out to the end of it, which is early next week. Now, we'll talk more about potential impacts for the islands coming up at the top of the hour. Stay tuned for that. I'll take a deep dive there. But we're going to take it beyond the cone because we need to start thinking about what might indeed happen, let's say, as it moves next week. We do believe that northward turn is going to occur, but probably not by Monday. So if it's somewhere in that zone on Monday, don't be alarmed. It's kind of expected. The question is, thereafter, that northward turn should take place. Should.
Yes, keyword in there is should. But, I mean, when you look at that, you kind of feel a bit more confident when you see most of those runs of the model taking it in that northward direction.
That's right. And so what I'm showing is the GFS ensemble members. This is one global model that's run many, many times over again, and a whole bunch of simulations all show the same thing. That gives us a little bit of confidence, at least looking at this model, that northward turn by the middle of next week should take place. Meaning, if you have interest in the southeast coast or Florida, it's not a no risk, but it's a low risk event for us. That's good news there. Bermuda, different story. Heads up if you live there. Another global model that we look at, ECMWF, European Center's forecast, shows essentially the same thing. There comes some stragglers that move westward, but the vast majority of the members in the multi-simulations go northward by the middle of next week. And then we ask ourselves the question, does it continue going north?
Right. We all want to keep drawing those lines northbound, but you can't necessarily do that.
No.
These models are based on the current state of the atmosphere, modeling it out, and there's an error just inherently baked into it in the long range.
And it's so far ahead. Right. It's not like it's not like it's tomorrow.
Right.
So that takes us to the middle of next week, which I put on here. And I put the larger scale steering patterns on there, giving us an idea that, yeah, probably Florida and the southeast U.S. at a low risk. But as this thing creeps northward, we don't know if there's going to be a trough or a ridge farther to the north over southeastern Canada or the United States. Those things have life shape it's going to be in. So if you live in North Carolina, you live in New Jersey, the northeast coast, there is a chance that this is uncomfortably close, not middle of next week, but beyond that. Not this weekend, but next weekend.
Right.
It's a long way out, but don't turn your back on this thing. It's going to be pretty big, pretty strong, and moving kind of close.
Yeah, I think a lot of times you see these systems out there in the Atlantic making that northward turn, and people say, oh, okay, this thing's out to sea. No worries. But as we continue to try to drive home, we can't do that just yet.
No, we can't. And history has shown us, when we look at landfalls in September, that we've had landfalling hurricanes and tropical cyclones in the Northeast in September. Those two dots up there, that green one, Jen and I were looking at this. That, I believe, was Hurricane Bell in 1976 that made it onshore into Long Island. And then the yellow dot there was Gloria. Remember that?
September's
85, right?
I was in the fourth grade. I do remember. We got the day off of school.
Wow.
But no, September is a dangerous month on the East Coast.
It is.
When it comes to hurricanes.
And of all intensities, from tropical storms.
Yeah. All right, good stuff, Greg. We'll keep talking about this. We know the summer season is coming too. I'll take you to some other spots. We have some sunny times at the beach as well. First stop up here into Michigan, where we do have a couple areas with some high risk of rip currents for today. Taking a deep dive here into your forecast, we do have thunderstorms. This is going to keep you off the beaches. Rain, storms with thunder and lightning. That includes at Sleeping Bear Dunes. Temperatures hitting about 80 today. So air temperature overall not bad. It's just that the rain is going to keep you away. That's been the case this morning around Grand Haven. We've had showers. We've had storms already. It continues right now with some rain falling. 81 degrees for a high temperature for you here. Then we jump down as we make your way into North Ave Beach around the Chicago area. Here, now, we had our storms earlier. We're going to get a break. We may see some come later into this area, but for the bulk of the day, we'll be okay. And so you might get a little beach time in. 85 degrees, outside air temperature, water temperature at 72 degrees. Jumping over to the East Coast, we've got a moderate risk of rip currents here up and down almost all of the beaches here on the eastern seaboard. Ocean City, Maryland, we are looking at a hot day. This is a good day for the beach, especially because now that all the kids are back in school, you might have it to yourself. Though I just don't know if they're able to have lifeguards at all the beaches now that all the kids are back at school. So make sure you play it safe out there. And again, water temperature still running in the mid-70s. Alex?
It's just a good point there about the liberty to choose the answers there. And I left out fireplace because...
Like a bonfire?
Oh, well, that is an intriguing thought.
Like the light would be hard.
I don't know.
I guess if you have an e-reader, then your light's built
You're
in.
fine. Either way, wherever you find the most comfort, let us know. We, of course, love hearing from you. You got the poll up on X. You can send your comments there, too. About this next system, Lee, that's hanging out there in the Atlantic.
Notice the weather was great. The waves weren't big. It wasn't rough. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that we have to watch out for because you can have those dangerous rip currents in otherwise benign conditions, at least seemingly.
It's good to review what you do when you get caught in a rip current every single time before you go to the beach here, just so it's fresh. I mean, I know you probably know, especially if you're a frequent beach goer, but just every time before you step foot in that water, what will I do if I get caught in a rip current? Float? You know, try to swim parallel to the shore, but it's okay if you don't, because most of the time the rips don't extend that far away from the shore, and they'll spit you out into the breaking waves, and that'll guide you back in.
Yeah, the key is to avoid the panic, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for choosing America's morning headquarters to get you through the mid-morning hours.
The Weather Channel helping you plan for all of your big events ahead. And this week, well, it's the first full week of fall, but we should put that in quotes because it doesn't feel like it. It's meteorological fall. The temperatures are still going up. The cooling centers are opening, and some schools can't even stay in session all day because it is too hot if they don't have AC.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. September can be a really hot time of the year, especially the first half.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we can see big-time heat waves through mid-month easy. Cooler air masses coming in. The contrast between that and the heat waves can lead to severe weather.
That's right. We have that, too.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we got the tropics.
Yeah.
We've certainly been busy the last couple of weeks. That's not stopping here for us. Now we've got Lee, Tropical Storm Lee, just on the precipice of becoming a hurricane right now.
Yeah, so new advisory in. We'll get you into that in a second. Greg Wistell will have that. But first, is there any relief from this heat, Alex?
For some.
Some.
Yes. So we'll talk about that. Does come, though, with that price to pay, and that's thanks to storms. That's
Yesterday in Philadelphia, we were 1 degree away, but today we should break it. So today, 96 degrees, that would break the record. 95 tomorrow, 93 on Friday. We're hot all week. Even on Saturday, when we cool down a little bit, we're still above average. Average is 83. We're going to be 87. So pretty hot stretch ahead. Now, you might be wondering, is this normal to get temps in the 90s in September? Well, not exactly, and I'll say that. So, we look at cities like Burlington, Syracuse, all the way into Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh. Your average last 90-degree day is in August. Some of you in early August, but your latest 90-degree day is in either the end of September or October. So while this is a little later than an average, it's not the latest on record when it comes to 90s. This happens. We do get 90s in September, which is why we haven't been breaking records every single day. We've been close. Now, here we go with the heat alerts that are up, heat advisories that go through tomorrow from D.C. and down towards Charlottesville, all the way up to Burlington. In Vermont, you're under a heat advisory. Temperatures are quickly warming up. We've hit the 90s in Richmond, 92 degrees. We're in the mid-80s in New York City. We're going to 92 degrees today, and a lot of us will be in the 90s all throughout New York State, Vermont. Even in Massachusetts, there'll be some spots getting up into the 90s, though in Boston, we'll stay into the lower 80s here, get a little cooling ocean breeze coming in. Now, for us in Harrisburg, that 96 today will tie a record. Philadelphia, that will break a record. And in D.C., 99 degrees will beat the old record of 98 set back in 1954. It's not the only spot hot. We can't shake this heat here across Texas. Today, also in parts of Arkansas, we've got a heat advisory. Temps warming up to 100 plus. Again, it feels like even worse than that thanks to the higher humidity here. And this trend, unfortunately, lasts. We're seeing more record heat again today across Texas. Alex?
Well, besides...
I've been able to avoid it so far in Nashville. We've had some thunderstorms already this morning, and there will be more. Today, 91 degrees. Then we get another chance of storms coming in, and that'll continue into at least the early evening before things clear out here. Here's a look at where we are right now. Look, Nashville, mainly everything has now moved east of us. There's still a few storms to our north in Middle Tennessee. A couple of showers not too far from Birmingham this morning, too. And this little cluster of storms has been nosediving here, moving through Mississippi. It's been moving along, right along I-55. You have to drive faster or slower than it to try to avoid it right there. Now, here's a look at where we could see severe storms today. Keeping an eye on Louisiana, southern Arkansas, all the way through Mississippi, up into Middle Tennessee, perhaps around Nashville, although it looks like further south, a better chance of getting into a little bit more of the feistier storms. The front extends all the way from the Midwest, where Alex was talking about, into the south. But it's in the south where we'll just have more for the atmosphere to work with. More instability, more available potential energy in the atmosphere, especially from Arkansas into Mississippi. We're going to see some of those storms tapping into that. That could lead to some strong damaging winds, as well as the threat for some hail, perhaps. Always got to be on guard for potential tornadoes, so that's not the main threat for today. Some of the stronger winds punching in aloft right here, especially right across the zone from Tennessee point southward. That will help invigorate some of the storms and give us that risk for potential severe winds coming out of the thunderstorms. Now, across the whole zone where we're expecting storms, we have that risk of some heavier rainfall rates, and that could lead to some flash flooding. So let's take a look at how things play out. The forecast radar, we see it about 3 o'clock or so when things really start to develop. Continuing through this evening, you can see Memphis and just south of there, thunderstorms rolling through Mississippi. Tupelo, you got that chance. And we may even get a few in Birmingham, although it's very isolated since it comes in overnight. All right, that's what's happening with the storm threat today when it comes to thunderstorm. What happens with Lee? But today, of course, it is about the tropics and some of the threats they bring.
That is right. Bringing to mind maybe systems like Superstorm Sandy, Frisbees,
yeah, that's
all
true.
That stuff going on where you can't really relax. There is a lot going on that you can't necessarily.
And if you're the parent watching the water, it's hard.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
you
absolutely.
can't. You've got like one eye on the water.
Probably should be just keeping an eye on the kids at that point. Good point there. How about
interesting? The airport sounds.
Yeah, I never even thought about having relaxing sounds as I was reading.
Is the airport relaxing?
Continues to blossom with tropical activity. A major hurricane that's expected by the weekend.
Meteorologist Jim Cantore took a trip to Virginia Tech's Department of Aerospace and Ocean Engineering, which studies hurricane force winds, to see how much force is in a Category 5 hurricane.
Just unfortunately had a child die, the 24th child dying in a car this year happening. So it's just one of those things. I know it's hard to wrap our brains around. How do you leave a child in the back seat? Our brains are weird. They work really weird.
And they're busy.
Exactly.
They're very busy. Yeah, so whatever you can do to help remind yourself, again, is beat the heat. check the back seat, look before you lock, just, always keeping that in mind. We also want to keep in mind that there could be some dangerous weather out there today with thunderstorms turning severe, the chance of lightning, and that might keep some kids off maybe the football field for practice today with these storms.
Yeah, practice, football, soccer still is going on as well. So let's talk about some of these zones that could be facing that risk for the storms. We'll start off in the southern tier. The
storms have been on the move, moving across lower Michigan, and now they're moving across the middle part of the state. These have now really started to develop coming up in the west side of Ohio, Toledo. You guys getting thunderstorms, some heavy rain coming down at the moment. Here's a closer view of what's happening. So we started our day off stormy around Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids. Now everything's kind of pushing east. Lansing, we're getting some storms. Not too far from Ann Arbor, we've got some thunderstorms as well, and up towards Cadillac, Michigan. Thunderstorms to start your September morning, all because of this low pressure moving up, and it's going to be moving east as it heads east later this week. We'll see some showers through Pennsylvania, New York State, maybe something to break our heat here. Today's risk zone, though, for storms which may go severe includes parts of Michigan over into western New York and western Pennsylvania, all the way down through Ohio and into Kentucky. Now, it's not the bright red on our map indicating severe weather, but there's the chance that some of these storms could bring some strong gusty winds. Got to keep an eye on that as the main threat. Maybe underneath that upper low, we could see some hail. Got to keep an eye on that. Green Bay, that's this afternoon. Fort Wayne, you see a couple of showers your way. Even Chicago, I know we had thunderstorms early on. We may not be done. 9 o'clock tonight, a few more showers may pop in the area. The potential for tropical storms to, well, what are the odds that there'll be a hit on the East Coast?
They're not zero. I mean, we have to keep that thought in mind. And look where the cone is over the next 5 to 7 days. It's going to be moving at very high intensity across the western Atlantic. Let's just assume that it's inside of this by early next week. That's getting close to parts of the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos. Maybe we could see some peripheral impacts, significant ones. It right now doesn't look like it, but certainly the edge effects.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about beyond that because, if you have interests in the mid-Atlantic or the Northeast, don't turn your back on this thing.
No, you can't. I mean, oftentimes you see these systems out here like this, and you kind of write it off like, all right, that's going to go out to sea.
Yeah.
That's for the fish. Right now, it's too early to do that along the East Coast. It's basically what we're saying.
That's right. And there were some systems early on this year, I believe Franklin was one of them, where it was very clear that was going to stay offshore from almost day one. So there was little concern with that. East Coast at a time where, wow, all the little details in the steering patterns will matter, and we just can't capture those yet. Let's just assume, again, early next week, it's somewhere inside of this cone. Here's a whole selection of models, some north, some south, but let's give it this. And early next week, Turks and Caicos, Bahamas, keep in mind there'll be a big hurricane, very likely, not that far away. Big waves, no doubt, and increasing swell along the southeast U.S.
Yeah. Now, you can take any one of these models and run them multiple times with tweaking the initial conditions because, again, we sample the atmosphere right now. It's not a perfect sampling, and so what if we were off by a little bit? So that's the point of these ensemble forecasts.
They try to bring the uncertainty, at least in the model universe, in sort of visual view, right? So when you run the models, you said over and over again, yeah, you're going to get slightly different answers if you tweak it a little bit. But look what they're doing. By the middle of next week, they're all kind of saying the same thing. So you're tweaking the model a little bit each time, but they're all coming up with essentially the same answer, meaning the model itself is pretty confident that there's going to be a big hurricane there, maybe closing in on Bermuda the middle of next week. We have to watch out for that.
Yeah, so you see something like that, you tend to say, okay, this looks like it's going to head due west at this point.
Probably
so
not.
You kind of look at, say, all right, maybe Florida. I wouldn't be completely letting the guard down, but you can kind of, I'd say, breathe a little bit there.
Yeah, we're going to watch it. If you have interest in the southeast coast, you're going to want to keep an eye on this. But right now, from all the data that we've got, it does look indeed that Lee will be well east of the southeast U.S. with really little weather concern there.
I mean, I don't just not to nitpick, but there is one member of the European ensemble which doesn't believe that,
That is
right?
true.
And so this is why we can't ever just say it's a zero chance.
That's right. This is exactly it. But you think about it with this ensemble member system of about 50-plus members, one out on that, because this is the real trick. Let's just to take it with us here that we're going to have a northward moving, powerful hurricane, maybe somewhere near Bermuda mid next week. We don't know what that mid-latitude steering pattern is going to look like. We'll talk much more about this tomorrow. Please tune in because we're going to have a discussion about this. Will there be a ridge in southeastern Canada or a trough on the east coast? Again, it's not clear yet. Those are the systems that move by every several days, and you get a new one. One goes away, and you get a new one coming in. So a trough is there now at mid next week. Well, maybe by next weekend there's a ridge there.
All right.
We don't know. Bottom line, if you live in the Carolinas all the way to the Northeast, don't turn your back on Lee. It's a long way out. There's a lot to sort out and plenty of time to think about this and prepare. But we may be dealing with a big hurricane uncomfortably close by.
Yeah, worth checking in on, for sure.
Yes. So yeah, don't let this today be your last time you check in. Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, the summer season coming to...
Yeah, we'll take you to some other spots. We have some sunny times at the beach as well. First stop up here into Michigan, where we do have a couple areas with some high risk of rip currents for today. Taking a deep dive here into your forecast, we do have thunderstorms. This is going to keep you off the beaches, rain, storms with thunder and lightning. That includes at Sleeping Bear Dunes. Temperatures hitting about 80 today. So air temperature overall not bad. It's just that the rain is going to keep you away. That's been the case this morning around Grand Haven. We've had showers. We've had storms already. It continues right now with some rain falling. 81 degrees for a high temperature for you here. Then we jump down as we make your way into North Ave Beach around the Chicago area. Here, now, we had our storms earlier. We're going to get a break. We may see some come later into this area, but for the bulk of the day, we'll be okay. And so you might get a little beach time in. 85 degrees, outside air temperature, water temperature at 72 degrees. Jumping over to the East Coast, we've got a moderate risk of rip currents here up and down almost all of the beaches here on the eastern seaboard. Ocean City, Maryland, we are looking at a hot day. This is a good day for the beach, especially because now that all the kids are back in school, you might have it to yourself. Though I just don't know if they're able to have lifeguards at all the beaches now that all the kids are back at school. So make sure you play it safe out there. And again, water temperature still running in the mid-70s. Alex?
It's just a good point there about the little liberty to choose the answers there. And a left-out fireplace.
Being around like a bonfire?
Oh, well, that is an intriguing thought.
Like the light would be hard.
I don't know.
I guess if you have an e-reader, then your light's built
You're
in.
fine. Either way, wherever you find the most comfort, let us know. We, of course, love hearing from you. You got the poll up on X. You can send your comments